Hello, welcome to the Cardinal Zone. I'm Jim Dayton alongside Jack Baer, and we're here to bring you another edition of our weekly podcast. Today we're talking Frank Kaminsky's Wooden Award Player of the Year case.
Yeah, and he's got a pretty good case because I believe starting this week, the tides seem to turn because all year Jahlil Okafor of Duke has been, the big pick. Obviously he's the number one draft prospect in the country, and he really hasn't disappointed, even though he was preseason player of the year for a lot of people. He's averaging something like 18 points, 9 rebounds per game and this is kind of like something you have to look at and then kind of process it and then realize just what this is. He's shooting 66% from the field, which is just astronomical.
He's such a smooth player for a true freshman. He's very developed. He's very polished already. And yes, absolutely, he will be the number one overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft. It would take some sort of shock to not have that happen.
Yes.
But the thing with, Kaminsky versus Okafor, this isn't who's going to have the better NBA career. This is who's the best player in college basketball this season and this season only. And then it gets pretty dicey and pretty close comparison.
Yeah, one thing I feel like we can't forget in this debate is that I feel Okafor gets a lot of points because they're both centers, and Okafor has the better points per game, rebounds, field goal percentage. And, you look at that and you think, oh, Okafor's better at his job, so he should be player of the year. But the thing is, Kaminsky isn't really a center. He's like a guard on stilts. And, Okafor's a very traditional center because he hasn't attempted a three-pointer all year. He's very good in the low post, probably the best in the country, but he's also not the best free throw shooter because he actually he's a 56% shooter from the free throw line, which, that's very center-ish. Whereas
some Shaq stats.
Yeah. And then, you look at Kaminsky and he's 40% from three-point range. He's a 76% shooter, free throw shooter. And, he moves the ball much better. He definitely has more assists than Okafor. And he's also much less turnover prone. So I feel like Okafor, it's kind of the lazy thing to see, everyone thinks that this guy's going to be the best NBA prospect, and B, he has the better center stats, so let's give it to him. But I feel that is just really not that fair to Kaminsky.
I mean, Kaminsky's asked to do so much more than Okafor is for Duke. Kaminsky, he goes on the low post, he comes out, sets screens, shoots threes, he plays on the perimeter, and he switches and defends players of other positions. He's not always guarding the other team's big man. He's a very dynamic threat for Wisconsin on both sides of the court. And, maybe that's not exactly something we can say for Okafor, though again, not to take anything away from Okafor. It's just perhaps he's not as dynamic as Kaminsky.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the defensive aspect, and Okafor isn't really getting drafted for his defense. That's really all I can say. Whereas Kaminsky Bo Ryan really likes a defensive system where his guards switch onto, or where pretty much anyone can guard anyone. So you see Kaminsky on a lot of 6'6" forwards or slashers, and that's really the thing. If they have a low post banger, then Kaminsky will be on him. But when that doesn't really happen, or when their center isn't a huge threat, you really do see Kaminsky switching onto wings a lot. And also, I found this really interesting. Kaminsky's leading the Badgers in assists.
Really?
Yeah, 58 assists. Second most is Koenig with 50.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes.
What do you think is we just touched on Okafor's draft stock. What do you think Kaminsky's draft stock is?
I feel like a lot of mock drafts are having sort of he's in striking distance for being a lottery pick because I guess a lot of people are seeing him as he could probably be kind of a poor man's Dirk Nowitzki. He can make open shots and he's not a you look at Kaminsky, he's this goofy-looking white guy, he just grew into his body through college. But, he got to probably play defense at the NBA level, not a Adam Morrison-esque rate. So I think he could definitely, break in, sort of that 10 to 15 range if he continued, if he has the tournament he had last year.
That's pretty high.
It's very high,
yeah.
But, we're trying to think about a ceiling. I mean, it's possible. I think he's probably at least jumped Decker in the NBA draft rankings, right? Do we think that?
I mean, see, NBA scouts are raving over Decker and how he's so athletic and that his game will translate so easily to the NBA. But at the same time, I mean, Decker's picked it up lately, but the first half of the season, he was kind of struggling.
Yeah, well,
and he was kind of disappointing.
People kind of judge Decker for his ankle injury. Remember Ben Wargel after a game was just saying ankle watch 2015, and that was that. I feel like that can't really explain all of his struggles because I doubt your ankle really affects your shooting stroke all that much. So Decker, he hasn't had the best of years, especially with Hayes pretty much equaling him in efficiency and use, but I feel like Kaminsky probably has jumped him at this point.
Yeah, those shooting numbers from Decker are concerning as far as a pro game goes. I mean, he's shooting I think it's 33% from 3-point. And I mean, he's a wing player and wings are asked to do so much in the NBA. And I don't know. Decker will play in the NBA, that's for certain. But I think you're right. Kaminsky has leapfrogged him at this point.
Yeah, plus they're just saying things that Kaminsky's really good at that really don't speak out. Because I think watching Kaminsky, the single best thing he is good at is footwork. I mean, that's a very Wisconsin thing for your best player to be good at footwork. But, that's just something that we kind of see. I remember, I think, in the Arizona game last year, Arizona's SB Nation blog just tweeted out, so does Kaminsky walk on every time he has the ball, or is that just me? No, that's just Kaminsky really playing the game that he's been trained to play. I mean, remember I was talking with Zach Rassel, our other men's basketball writer, during the game, and I theorized that Bo Ryan buys a steak dinner for any guard who leads the team in rebounds or forward who leads in assists after a game. I feel like that could actually be a thing, And in that game, I think Gosser and Kaminsky both met those criteria. But it really speaks to just what Kaminsky's become as far as, the guard on stilts, being able to shoot, being able to distribute. And that's why I think that he could actually do not terribly in the NBA.
Well, yeah, one of the stronger parts of Kaminsky's game, and something that does not get any attention really, is he can handle the ball. He's 7 feet tall, and he's not a turnover liability at all.
Oh no, everyone in Wisconsin isn't a turnover liability. I think I saw Ken Palm's. His top 10 players in the Big Ten efficiency wise are 5 of them are the Badgers starters. So yeah, none of them are turnover prone, but
sometimes you just see Kaminsky get the ball in transition.
Oh yeah,
just fluidly move up the court. And finish it off.
Yeah, when a lot of teams have started pressing the Badgers, and forcing Koenig to give the ball up to either Hayes or Kaminsky, or they just cover Koenig on the inbound. Yeah, that happens about once a game where Kaminsky just says F this, and he grabs the ball and runs up the court and at least tries to force a stupid decision. Most of the time he just sort of forces the other team into a half-court defense so the Badgers can play their game, but even that's valuable.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, we're going to transition into some sad news in the college basketball world. The passing of Dean Smith, former North Carolina head coach, who coached for so many years with the Tar Heels and coached so many NBA players. Jack, you're a big North Carolina fan and know a little bit more about his history than I do. What can you tell us about Dean Smith?
Well, for starters, yes, he was an amazing coach. I think he had one losing season as a coach ever, and I think from 1970 on, he never finished lower than third in his conference. We like to talk about that. Bo Ryan, always consistent, never is lower than fourth in the Big Ten. Well, I'd argue the ACC was harder in Dean Smith's time, and he did it for about 25 years. So that's just something. Then you look at the players he sent to the NBA, Michael Jordan, obviously, but then James Worthy, Vince Carter, Anton Jamison. In my column about Dean Smith, I think Breitbart.com, his players went on to total 332,000 points, which is 8.65 Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's.
That's a lot of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's.
Yes, I feel like even 2 Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's would be excellent for a coach to say he did, but 8.65, that's a heck of a thing. But even saying all of that, that he was a better person than he was a coach. Just Google Dean Smith segregation and read about all the stuff he did. I cannot emphasize this enough. When you look at the landscape of sports today, we're just cool with a guy being oh, hey, he's not a criminal. Just saying that, Rick Pitino screwed someone in a restaurant. John Calipari always gets the one and dones. Dean Smith is just like the stories are incredible. Like everyone involved in UNC fandom, well, not fandom, but involved with UNC seems to have a story about how he randomly remembered them. And it's really just incredible about how many players saw him as a father figure. Michael Jordan said that he was, Dean was his second father. I mean, he was just a ridiculously good person.
Especially considering the time period. I mean, he got, when did he exactly start coaching in North Carolina?
In the 60s, about.
60s, yeah. So you consider the time period and you consider the place he's at, North Carolina in the South, and the fact that he stood up for all those things and stood up against racism is definitely a hell of a testament to his character.
Oh, in his coaching tree, we have to say this because there's Roy Williams, who's coaching UNC right now, won 2 national championships with UNC, and is already a Hall of Famer. But Larry Brown, George Karl, Greg Popovich, Tom Ziller of SB Nation pretty well that Smith was the Zeus of modern basketball. He just has ties to pretty much to a lot of really good coaches and executives.
Yeah. I like those names that you read off. Larry Brown, George Karl. That it's pretty remarkable that he could touch and influence so many different coaches' career paths.
Yeah, and once again, I'm going to bring it back to Dean Smith's activism. Imagine if, Bo Ryan, after a press conference, just said, "Oh, and it's ridiculous that gay people can't get married in every state." Because that's about what Dean Smith did. Every year he was active. Mm-hmm. And I just, this is obviously a Wisconsin paper. We want to focus on the Badgers, but I feel when a person as important on the sports landscape as this, even just recognizing what he was to the rest of the sports world, what the rest of the sports world could be when you consider that it is possible you have a guy like this take over a program and just do all he did. I feel like that's a message that everyone needs to hear. I titled the column, "You Should Know More About Dean Smith," because I think that's just something Wisconsin people should know. But yeah, so, rant over. Dean Smith was awesome. Now we're going to bring this to something a little less awesome. The Badgers men's hockey team. And for that, we have Andrew Tucker, one of our men's hockey beat writers. And how you doing, Andrew?
Great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Are you doing a little better than Badger men's hockey?
Well, they haven't played since Saturday, so I haven't had to go through that for, 5 days now? So, yeah, this season it's been a rough one, especially compared to last season where, they made the tournament. They won the Big Ten tournament, the first Big Ten tournament. And this year they're going to be, first to worst, going to be by far the last team.
Yeah, I remember seeing a stat, maybe you can corroborate this, but the Badgers were the last team in Division I hockey to get a win, right?
I would believe it.
And then they're also the last team in the country to get a conference win.
But
yes.
they haven't gotten it.
That's still a thing. That's ongoing.
Yeah, no, they are. It's like they're trying to tank to get better players, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, college actually works the opposite way. When you're good, you get better players.
Exactly. And how bad they've been. I can't believe it helps recruiting too much. I know that there's been some speculation about Mike Eve's job security, which would drive away recruiting. So, futility, some questions about your coaching. It could snowball. I don't think it will. They're so young that I think that in a couple of years they'll be back to their top form. But it has really been hard to watch this year.
So, yeah, you see 2 years ago, they were pretty bad, not as bad as a train wreck that we've seen this year. But, last year they were pretty good. And then they win the Big Ten tournament. A lot of players are drafted, which kind of explains what's happening now. And do you think there's a chance that's going to happen this year, or is this just the next wave of talent and they're just going to have that sort of rebuilding process for the foreseeable future with Eves?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of young guys have been performing pretty well. The best example of that is definitely Grant Bessie, who is just a sophomore. He's their leading scorer. He's been really hot ever since the end of winter break. But he has been drafted already. He is currently listed as being part of the Anaheim Ducks organization. So he could leave college if he wanted to after the season. So provided that these guys stay, I think that in the next year or two, they'll be very good. But again, you have to hope these guys stay. Because a lot of these guys, when they're so good in high school and juniors, they get drafted and then they can just leave after a year or two.
Has there been any indication that Bessie will leave, or will he come back, do you think?
I'd like to say he'll come back. I haven't heard anything that he is planning to leave, but if he thinks that they're not going to be any good next year, there's a decent chance that he will leave and try and, start to break into the or NHL.
And if he leaves, I guess there's a good chance we see Mark Johnson, head men's hockey coach of Wisconsin, right?
There's a lot of people that really think that would be a good move. He's been so successful on the women's side that, I mean, if it was, if Mike Eaves does leave, I think he would have to get the job. If he wants it. He might want to stay with the women's team, but a lot of people, say that he's had his eye on the men's job. He thought he should have gotten it when Eaves got the job. So I think he'd be a great fit if they did get rid of Eaves.
How do you think the senior leaders feel on this? Well, senior leaders, quotation marks, but how do you feel that they're doing this year? I mean, Joel Rumpel, he's kind of...
Joel Rumpel hasn't been great. He was so good last year. He was up for, awards. He was nationally heralded for being such a great goalie. And, I mean, they had a lot of great defensive players last year, and they were getting a lot of shots on goal. And, this year he has had more pressure, but he's... just made some mistakes. There was, I can remember one own goal where Chase Drake accidentally scored. That's just kind of, that level of lack of communication shows that, he might not be on his top form. And, last weekend he let up 9 goals in 2 games. And, sure, they were getting a lot of shots, but, you'd like to think that a top tier goalie would be able to at least, maybe lose 3-1 or 2-1.
What do you think has been the reason behind all the blown leads this season? It seems like, I mean, man, that Minnesota series is something else.
Yeah, Minnesota and Michigan both. They lost huge leads. I think the team doesn't really know what it's like to be in the lead. They don't know what to do because they've been behind so far, so much for so long this year that they just kind of get maybe a little antsy. They start trying to do too much. And then once they've got that lead, it's like a dog chasing cars. They don't know what to do if they actually catch one.
Solid reference, bro. All right. Well, with that very kind of
somber note.
Yeah. Hopefully they get better, but
don't hold your breath.
Yeah. So, you want to take this?
Yeah. Again, thanks a lot, Andrew, for joining us, and we'll send you off with our story of the week. Our women's hockey writer Bobby Ehrlich wrote a nice feature on Blair Turnbull. She's a senior on the women's hockey team, and she comes from a small town in Nova Scotia, and she's made her way here via a hockey family. Her brother and her dad, big hockey people as well. But check that story out on our website.
Yeah, I'd say men's hockey could use a Blair Turnbull.
Yeah.
Not maybe the actual Blair Turnbull, but, a senior leader who can really kind of run the offense, which would be...
Just anybody.
Nice. Yeah.
Anybody would help.
Well, actually, maybe the Blair Turnbull would help. We don't know.
I mean, it couldn't hurt, that's for sure.
Yeah,
but with that...
It's not like they're not going to not win a conference game. They're probably not going to win a conference game.
And with that, that will do it for this episode of the Cardinal Zone podcast. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, bye, guys.